You are listening to The Bridge Busters, the first dam busters and the race to save Britain, written and narrated by Mark Felton and published by Mandalay Books. Chapter 7. M-Bomb. Air Marshal Charles Portal convened a meeting at Bomber Command headquarters on the 12th of June 1940 that included the most senior personnel to be involved in the planning for the forthcoming aqueducts raid. Air Vice Marshal Arthur Harris represented No. 5 Group, William Hallcrow, the government's best scientific minds, and for the first time a naval expert was brought in to assess Wing Commander Bennett's plan and the possible use of naval ordnance. Lieutenant Commander Langton Gowland was a career naval officer and an expert in torpedoes and mines. He headed the so-called Whitehead Department at HMS Vernon, the Navy's torpedo and mine experimental development station at Portsmouth. If anyone could assess the suitability of hitting the aqueducts with Admiralty products, it was 37-year-old Gowland. One of the first things was the ruling out of the 2,000-pound armour-piercing bomb, an idea that had been floating around for a while, on account of the improbability of hitting the target. Also ruled out was Hallcrow's suggestion of attacking the canal's embankments on either side of the aqueducts. The Germans could probably repair the damage in less than a week, whereas damage to the actual aqueducts would take a month or more to repair. Any operation had to be worth the attendant risks to the lives of aircrew and their planes. The discussion turned to the use of mines, and Commander Gowland carefully answered all of the members' detailed questions and assessed the operational material prepared by Bennett. In theory, at least, all were agreed that M-bombs should be used to attack the aqueducts. "They will need to be dropped from low level," Gowland said. "How low?" Bomber Harris demanded. "Between 50 and 200 feet, sir," Gowland replied. "The lower the better." Harris made a note on a pad of paper in front of him, his face impassive. This would not be popular with his squadrons. "Mr. Hallcrow, I believe that you have had a chance to assess the explosive power of one of these mines," Portal asked, turning to the clever engineer seated at his elbow. "Yes, sir," Hallcrow replied, leafing through a sheaf of papers in front of him. "I conducted a test on a concrete promenade at Folkestone. We exploded a mine containing 300 pounds of TNT in the open air on the floor." "And what did you discover?" Portal asked. "Well, sir, the amount of damage sustained by the promenade augured well for the chances of destroying the aqueducts if, and I must emphasize the if, the M-mines can be laid in them," Hallcrow replied. "How will the mines be set off?" Portal asked, looking across the table at Commander Gowland. "It will be a very simple matter to cause the M-bombs to be operated by the action of water on a soluble plug fuse without the incorporation of any of the secret devices that operate the bombs when used on the magnetic principle," Gowland stated. It was a concern that if the Germans captured any of the mines intact, secret British technology would be exposed. A soluble plug fuse based on the common aspirin would replace the usual detonation method. The top-secret magnetic mechanism would be removed and a soluble delay fuse inserted in its place that could initially function between half an hour and 4 hours, though this was later refined even further. "It will be necessary to ascertain the length of time that will be required to dissolve the plug in fresh water," Portal said. "I'd also like the Navy to determine that the bombs will not detonate if they strike the ground or the walls of the aqueducts," Bomber Harris added, thinking of the crews who would have to carry out the raid. "This is essential, as we have agreed to drop the bombs from very low level." Addressing the issue of plug fuses, Gowland replied that he didn't yet have an answer. "I can't estimate within any definite limits the length of time that will elapse between the immersion of the bomb and its detonation," Gowland said, "but I can obtain this information for you within a very short time." "Excellent," Portal replied. "So, we seem to have reached a consensus, gentlemen. The only method of attack which will have a good chance of creating serious and prolonged interruption, the traffic in the canal, is to use specially adjusted M-bombs dropped from 50 to 250 feet at 200 miles per hour into the aqueducts themselves. The others all nodded their agreement. Conversation now turned to the men who would have to conduct this risky operation. "I've got about 15 crews whom I can rely on to carry out the attack and plant the mines with accuracy," Harris said gruffly. "That is, provided there isn't too much interference by searchlights." It was agreed that the attack should therefore be made with a concurrent diversionary attack from a higher altitude on the nearby city of Münster to draw German searchlights upwards. "Lay that on, will you, Harris?" Portal ordered. "Yes, sir." Turning to Gowland, Portal asked that the Admiralty answer 5 important questions that he, Harris, and Hallcrow had come up with based on the naval officer's answers. Firstly, could the bomb be made to operate in fresh water? Secondly, what was the minimum time possible between immersion and detonation? Thirdly, would the bomb detonate if it hit the ground or concrete when dropped from low altitude? Fourthly, that no secret with regard to magnetic mines would be given away if any were retrieved intact by the enemy, and fifthly, the dates by which 5, 10, and 15 modified mines respectively could be delivered to Harris's 5 group. On the 12th of June, Portal sent a further message to the Admiralty, chasing the delivery of the first mines. Urgently, necessary attacks should be made early in present strategical situation during favourable moon conditions now approaching. There wasn't a moment to lose. The Admiralty replied to all of Air Marshal Portal's questions concerning the mines on the 14th of June. The Navy stated that the mines would not explode if they struck concrete, and the fitting of soluble plugs was a simple modification. The Navy agreed that the mines could also be dropped into only 8 feet of water, though here they refused to guarantee that they would not break up on impact. Their advice was to drop the mines as low and as slow as possible. On receipt of another signal from the Admiralty stressing one point in particular, Wing Commander Trail, writing to Bomber Harris, emphasized once again that the bombs should only be released when flying as low as possible and reducing speed as much as tactical situation allows. Harris could see that the operation was rapidly turning into a suicide mission for the young crews that he would have to order to carry it out. A lone aircraft droned across the sky over 5 miles above the twin aqueducts M25 and M25A. German gunners manning anti-aircraft batteries along the Dortmund-Ems Canal looked up into the bright sky, squinting beneath the brims of their steel helmets, but they couldn't see the aircraft. Only hear the unmistakable purr of a Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. The aircraft was too high for anti-aircraft fire as it hammered across the clean air, the pilot's view of the green countryside and the straight canal as it crossed the sinewy Ems River, occasionally blocked by thin, scudding clouds thousands of feet below. Banking the Spitfire over, the pilot could make out both aqueducts crossing the Ems, tiny black lines from 30,000 feet as he lined up for his attack run. But unlike the Hamdens of 49 and 83 Squadrons, this particular British warplane was on a different kind of mission against the canal. The Spitfire PR Mark 1B was unarmed. The PR stood for Photographic Reconnaissance, and the aircraft was painted PR blue all over to make her harder to spot by German flak gunners and any patrolling Luftwaffe fighters. She was also very fast, having had all 8 of her Browning machine guns removed, increasing her top speed from 362 to an impressive 390 miles per hour, enough to outrun any roving Messerschmitt. The pilot, oxygen mask clamped across his mouth, shifted his position slightly inside the cramped but heated cockpit and pressed a button. As he did so, camera shutters opened and closed rapidly as several feet of 5-inch wide black and white film was quickly exposed, the big black cameras whirring as they stole their secret images of the enemy far below. The mission had been ordered earlier on the 15th of June. It was imperative that Portal and Bennett's planning staff have up-to-date images of the proposed targets. The most important thing was to determine from the photos if there was water in both of the aqueducts, indicating that both were in use due to the massively increased German traffic. This information had to be on Portal's desk by midday on the 16th of June. Banking away from the canal, the Spitfire pilot set course for England, blasting along through the unfriendly skies, his head constantly scanning for trouble, his big engine burning up a gallon of fuel a minute as he rushed the precious photographs back to base for immediate development and interpretation. Meanwhile, at Priddy's Hard in Gosport, a large collection of Victorian red brick buildings and assembly sheds just across the Solent from Portsmouth, Navy and civilian employees outside the Royal Naval Mine Depot freighter were slowly loading a fleet of dark blue painted flatbed trucks. 20 specially modified mines, A Mark I, what the RAF called M-bombs, were ready for dispatch to RAF Skempton. Each long dark mine, with its canvas parachute harness tightly secured at the top end, had been marked at the RAF's insistence with the letters NM inside a white triangle, so they couldn't be mixed up with the regular magnetic versions used for gardening sorties. Crates containing the weapon's primers and soluble aspirin detonators were also loaded, the top-secret weapons being obscured from public view by thick tarpaulins held down with strong ropes. Once the loading was completed, the naval ratings driving the trucks slammed their doors marked RN in white lettering and started their engines. Slowly, with Hillman Tilley utility vehicles at the front and rear of the convoy, carrying an escort consisting of an officer and a few bored-looking ratings armed with Lee Enfield rifles and Lanchester submachine guns, the convoy set out for the long drive to Lincolnshire. The convoy did not leave with the Admiralty's blessing. Many, including Lieutenant Commander Gowland, still thought that the mines would break up when they hit the shallow water inside the two aqueducts, and had warned the Air Ministry of this likely outcome on several occasions. But the Navy had fulfilled its end of the bargain, and would keep up the supply of modified mines as and when asked by Bomber Command. It was now an RAF problem. At Skempton, a change of command had been made. Both 49 and 83 squadrons received new commanding officers. At 49, the new CO was John Downwind Gillan. Wing Commander Gillan, 37, was a fighter pilot by training and instinct, as well as something of a celebrity. Noted as a skillful and determined leader, he had been awarded the Air Force Cross in 1938 for flying a Hurricane a distance of 327 miles in only 48 minutes, generating great publicity for the brand new RAF fighter. He soon impressed his rather forceful personality on the 49 Squadron pilots, and was the polar opposite of the man sent to replace Willie Snaith at 83 Squadron. Wing Commander John Sisson was a small, quiet man with a pleasant personality who didn't say much. Though quite a departure from the previous CO, the 83 Squadron crews soon came to respect and admire Sisson. The time for speeches was over anyway, for at this stage there wasn't much to say, except to keep up a maximum effort against the Germans. Both Sisson and Gillan could plainly see that their aircrews were nearing the end of their collective tethers. They were racking up 20 sorties a month on virtually non-stop operations, and were exhausted, tetchy, and exhibiting all the signs of low morale. But, with the Germans on the Channel coast and the threat of invasion in the offing, neither Gillan nor Sisson could afford to relax the punishing rota of raids on Germany, mostly conducted at low level. Every night, Bomber Command sent between 100 and 150 aircraft against targets in Germany. Everyone in 5 Group would have to push on regardless. Bomber Harris convened a meeting to discuss the aerial reconnaissance photographs snapped by Spitfires during 2 fast sorties over the aqueduct target area. The Photographic Development Unit had produced a concise report that was distributed to all interested parties, with a primary focus on 5 Group. "If you look here, sir," the officer from Air Intelligence said, pointing to a blown-up black-and-white photo of the canal and its aqueducts, You'll notice that M25A doesn't appear to be open to traffic. Harris used a magnifying glass, the details of the new aqueduct coming sharply into focus. "What about these?" Harris asked, pointing out several small craft moored inside the aqueduct. "We've counted 4 small barges, sir, but they are probably used for construction work on this section," the officer replied. It was clear that, although the newer aqueduct was filled with water, no large barges were currently using it. The other, older structure, M25, was open, and larger barges could be seen moving along its surface. "What about flak?" Harris asked. "PDU has located 3 like flak positions, 150, 250 and 350 yards south of the old aqueduct M25, the intelligence officer said, pointing these positions out on a larger scale photograph. "There's another about 150 yards north of M25A. "Any heavy stuff around?" Harris demanded, thinking of the highly versatile 88mm flak guns that the Germans used to deadly effect. "Yes, sir, there's a single heavy battery 3,000 yards east of the aqueducts, and another light battery 4,000 yards southeast," the staff officer replied, pointing them out on a map of the area. "What about balloons?" Harris asked, concerned that his planes might end up down by the cables of tethered barrage balloons. "Haven't seen a single one, sir," the officer replied. This was good news, though Harris had already ordered that some of the aircraft that would take part in the raid be fitted with balloon cutters on their wings, just in case. It appeared from the available intelligence that the Germans either didn't expect the British to mount an attack on the aqueducts, or their own engineers and scientists had advised them that the British didn't possess the weapons or the wherewithal to smash such solid structures. The place was virtually undefended, for now. You have been listening to The Bridge Busters, the first dam busters in the race to save Britain, written and narrated by Mark Felton. For excellent short films on many military history subjects, please visit Mark Felton Productions on YouTube. You can also help support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon, details in the description box below.